Emotions are running high in China today, where the country is marking its 70th anniversary under communist rule. While in Hong Kong, protests turned violent once again. You're looking at live footage here of the streets in Hong Kong, where you can see a lot of that growing unrest on the ground. Now, police did fire tear gas and real bullets at protesters. At least one person was reportedly shot and more than a dozen injured. Yahoo Finance's Aikiko Fujita joins us now. Aikiko, quite the contrast here between the celebrations in China and what's happening on the streets in Hong Kong.
Yeah, let's start with what happened in Hong Kong. By far the most violent day we've seen since these protests began several months ago. That one student, 18-year-old student that was shot, local reports suggesting that he was conscious when he was sent from the scene. Now, police have said this was a live round that was fired in self-defense. But let's talk about the backdrop of all of this. National Day, as it's called over in Hong Kong, has always been a bit controversial, a bit bittersweet, because Hong Kong people on the one hand have celebrated it by having these fireworks display and raising the Chinese flag in Hong Kong, but there have always been these sort of underlying tones of whether this should be celebrated, because in their eyes, China has not continued to uphold the one country, two systems. This year, the city was placed essentially in lockdown. They moved that flag raising ceremony inside and they canceled the fireworks. So clearly the Hong Kong leaders very sensitive to what's happening. Now, that, as you point out, Brian, was a stark contrast to what we saw over in China, a huge military parade, 15,000 soldiers marching there. And I would note, this was always seen as a way for China to show its muscle. I thought it was interesting. They also displayed for the first time a new generation of an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, that is capable of reaching the U.S. Some seeing that as a sign, as China saying, look, we are not going to back down.
Sure. And speaking of President Xi, he seemed pretty adamant in his speech saying, quote, nothing will stop his country. I mean, what does this mean now as those talks loom, those high-level talks here in D.C. October 10th?
Yeah, I mean, it increasingly looks like the Chinese and the U.S. are at odds in terms of the fundamental changes they want to see in this trade deal. Now, we do know the U.S. has been sensitive to this October 1st date. Remember, President Trump moved the increase in the tariffs from October 1st to October 15th as a goodwill gesture, so China can celebrate this day. But I would say, look, if you look at the comments that came out last week from President Trump, as well as Chinese foreign minister here in New York, it certainly doesn't seem like either side's ready to back down. And we did get some news on that front from Apple as well, with the U.S. saying that they're not going to give an exception to Apple for these tariffs that are set to increase on October 15th. So it certainly looks like things are going to continue the way they have been, which of course is not good news for a lot of these American companies.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.